Hi, Pete. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. It's great to have you on as a fan of the Dandy Warhols and your side projects, which we'll get onto later. But the Dandy Warhols released the latest album this year in March. What's it been like having a new album out?
Um, it's a the music industry is so weird these days. It's you kind of release a record and hope for, I don't know, anybody to pay attention. It's hard to get anybody to pay attention. Um, this record we got a lot more than the last few, so it's been great in that sense. We've got a good label working with us this time, and it definitely pays off. So yeah.
With streaming and that these days, people don't tend to listen to albums in full anymore. So does that impact like the album sales and stuff?
I assume it does. I really don't pay attention to it. I hear things are bad. So as far as album sales go, um, uh, in general, not just us. But I've heard this record is doing better than the previous one, at least, if not the previous two or three. Um, and I'm sure, having the guests that we had on our record helped a lot. That seems to be something that the hip hop world has always done, and the rock world is slow to follow. But I don't know. We've always had guests on our record, so that's not really anything particularly new. It's just this time the record label actually paid attention to it and like used it for, to help promotion. So yeah.
Is it right that the songs from this album started as guitar riffs?
Yeah, yeah. That was a sort of new approach to the writing of songs. They still sound like Dandy's songs. There's no avoiding that. And I mean, it's not like we haven't had guitar riffs before. It's just that those kind of came later in the process as opposed to the beginning of it. Um, it was super fun. It's going to be hard to not continue doing that. Um, um, though I know Courtney and Zia want to make a very different sort of record next, and I don't even know how to get my head wrapped around it yet because I'm still writing riffs.
No, like Dandy Warhol's album sounds the same as the last. So did starting with guitar riffs influence the direction the album went?
Sorry, what you mean? When did it?
No, like with starting the songs with guitar riffs, did that
Yeah.
influence the direction the album went in musically?
Well, I mean, the idea was in place that it was going to be a kind of a harder guitar oriented record. Like that was the first thing, and then the realization that writing through riffs would make it, uh I don't know, that came second to the concept, or not that there's a concept, it's just the seed of an idea of what the record should be.
You mentioned before you've had some special guests on the album, Slash, Debbie Harry, and Frank Black. Uh, so speaking of Debbie Harry, when you were writing the songs, did you have her in mind, or was it after the song was finished?
It pretty much, after, in that case, after it was finished. Our manager at the time like heard the sort of rough vocal that Courtney had put down, like he had a falsetto part, and he was like, this needs to be, his initial idea was Susie Sue, um, which would have been amazing. I didn't think that was a possibility, so I just kind of cheekily ran off another series of famous female, singers from kind of the same era, um, not thinking that any of them were a possibility. And yeah, a couple weeks later, Debbie Harry was on board, and I've heard that we kind of have Chris Stein to thanks, because apparently he heard the song and was like, "Yes, you should do this." But I, I don't know. It's all hearsay.
You co-wrote 6 songs on the album with Courtney. What was it
Uh-huh.
like? What was the songwriting like for the album? Did you enjoy it?
I did actually quite a bit. It was kind of that it all happened during the pandemic, so that Courtney's in my little circle of close friends, family, whatever, that I actually saw for months and months. And we would get together once or twice a week and just work on music. Zia seemed to have other things going on, and Brent, our drummer, lives in Australia, so it was just pretty much just the two of us, and it hadn't been that way since we started the band, really. So um, it was very cool. It was, yeah, definitely nostalgic in a way.
You mentioned the music business has changed since you started to now. How much has the recording process changed?
That's changed completely too. It's like when we started, their Pro Tools and the digital recording didn't really exist in the same way. We would make 4-track demos, then kind of learn the songs and then go into a studio, which was very expensive. And now, I mean, I essentially do most of my recording in this room, and bring it into the Dandy studio, even though that's got a better setup. I'm just more comfortable here. So anybody can do recordings at pretty much the same level, in their bedroom these days, and that certainly wasn't the case back when we started.
Yeah. Well, you've got a show in Seattle at the weekend, and then you play some shows in Europe in September and October. Are you looking
Mhm.
forward to these shows?
Always. I wish we had a few rehearsals before this show this weekend.
Why haven't
uh,
you got rehearsed?
I mean, we're always. I mean, we know these songs. The issue this time is that we're not playing with Brent for the Seattle show, because it just doesn't make any sort of financial sense to try and fly him in from Australia to do a little show in Seattle. So we've got one of our two kind of fill-in drummers playing, and we have played with him recently, but not within a couple months. So it'd be nice if we were better rehearsed, but we're just not, and it's not going to happen because Zia's on vacation and is just showing up there, and yeah, so
Like
that's
you
the way
say
it
as well, you've played most of these songs for years, so it's kind of
is.
natural
Yeah,
to do it.
yeah, yeah,
Speaking
and
of,
then definitely very very excited to come back to Europe. It's been a bit frustrating that we haven't managed to get over there yet on this record, but touring with the Black Angels was super fun last year, and I'm glad we get to do it in Europe, because both bands sort of egg each other on to do better, because they're so good. We have to at least try.
uh, I watched the Dig documentary not long ago. Actually, I know you've
Yeah,
got mixed feelings about that, but Courtney says in the documentary it took less time to be kind of successful in England than it did America. Did you
yeah,
feel that as well?
for sure. And it's I really, I mean, some of it is probably down to it's a smaller territory, I guess, and you have a more centralized radio, um, and we had some songs that were on the radio. Whereas in the U.S., we got played on some college stations, and we had a couple spins on MTV, that got us got us a certain distance, but in the UK it went very quick. And same with Europe. I just think, um, it just seems like there's a better appreciation of music over there, or appreciation for a wider variety of music in
Yeah.
Europe and the UK. Not that it doesn't exist here, but there's just so much, like the mainstream is so massive, and we've never really been mainstream, or at least not mainstream here.
Well, speaking of you kind of cracking England, English bands want to crack America, but not many do. So is that why you think? Because of the mainstream and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. And also it's just so damn big. And and it's expensive. And I mean, I've kind of given up trying to break any of my smaller projects in the US because I'll go broke, you know, and the clubs don't treat you as well. Like in Europe, they feed you and put you up, you know, find a place for you to sleep. In the US, they don't even feed you. So sometimes they don't even pay you. So
Jesus.
yeah, it's pretty brutal. But then like, you know, you break the states, it pays off. So that's why people keep trying.
And Bohemian Like You was in a Vodafone advert, and that helped the band's fame in Europe, didn't it?
It helped worldwide. Well, it helped. I mean, it helped here too because it actually allowed us to buy a studio and allowed us to be sort of independent from um, where once Capitol Records dropped us. You know, we can keep recording and creating on the level that we did before. Um, so yeah, that was an amazing piece of luck. To get that you know spot, I guess. Definitely, I don't know. Definitely got our music in people's ears that wouldn't have heard it before. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Were you approached about that then, or was it just your like record label about using it in the advert?
It was the publishing company, but we'd had songs and advertisements before, and nothing happened. Nothing like that happened. It's a different, like that's the kind of luck part, you know. It connected to people, somehow an advertisement connected, you know. Like I don't know if everybody went and bought Vodafone after that, but they definitely heard us, and a lot of them came to our shows and bought our records. So and that never happened like that before.
Well, that was a year after the song came out. It was in the advert, and you
Yeah,
seem to
yeah,
see
yeah.
it now with like social media and TikTok that a song seems to be becoming popular from like a trend or something now. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean on social media? So I guess that's a
yeah.
good thing in a way.
I guess.
Well, yeah, it
Yeah, I mean,
depends how you look at it.
it's, I mean, you do what you have to do to get any sort of attention these days. There's so many people all vying for, you know, your attention span um, that yeah, whatever it takes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of the Dig documentary, how do you look back at it now?
Um, I I like it less and less.
Really?
I haven't seen it, you know, probably in what, it came out 20 years ago, so I haven't seen it in probably 19 years.
Really?
Um, and I have no interest in seeing it again. It's I remember it being a good movie, but it's not an accurate documentary because it's not actually telling, you know, it's not facts. It's telling a story using mostly real footage. There's, you know, a lot of what Andy filmed of us was recreating things to fill in her gaps of stuff that she missed because she couldn't be with both bands all the time, you know. So like a lot of the studio stuff of us recording 13 Tales of Monkey House, that's just recreated.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We were done recording. She just needed some stuff to fit in, and you know, that was all fine. I imagine it's done all the time in documentaries. Um,
Well,
but
as a fan of the band, like if we didn't speak to you and know like that it had missed a lot out, etc. Do you know what I mean? Like your inside knowledge of it, I think it's great because it shows like one band's rise, then another band who had like the talent and everything kind of implode. Is that how you see it?
um, yeah, that is kind of how I see it. The unfortunate thing is that people decided that they had to choose one band over the other, and so there's always like this, like they like, you didn't ask it, which is kind of surprising, but almost every interview that I've done, the question comes up, do you still speak to Anton? Like there was ever like the made up rivalry ever went like so far that we stopped speaking to each other. You know, it's just like that's the sort of disappointing part, is that we were always, I don't know, not maybe great friends, but friends. It's like we were both in bands at the same time trying to, do something outside of the mainstream in the US. Um, and we both sort of achieved our success, somehow. Um, but there's, yeah, it's just weird and sort of disappointing, that the film sort of turned us into rivals, or tried to.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It was more like healthy competition than rivalry, wasn't it?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, they would do things that we thought were cool, and we were like, oh, we have to try and do something as cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I mean, there can't be a true competition, with art, because it's very unique. Each band has their uniqueness. Um, so it's a pointless thing to even try and have a competition. There are no, one band might get lucky and have a bit of success before the other one.
Yeah, yeah. How long was the filming process of that?
Something like 8 years.
So that's what I mean. So a 2 hour documentary with 8 years of footage, you're only going to pick the bits that are like the arguments or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a thing that's not in the. I mean, there's Andy was at my wedding, and she filmed. There's clips of it that are in the movie, if I remember right. But what she didn't put in is Anton is there, and he gets up and sings a song for us. You know, because that wouldn't fit into the story.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Uh, yeah, but oh well.
Well,
But I mean, I do have to admit that it has, at first I think it hurt both bands, but in the long run, it's definitely helped both of us. It's like that's that kind of, there's no such thing as bad press kind of thing. Um, it got us attention, got us, you can't beat that kind of publicity.
yeah, exactly. Why do you think it hurt the band at the start, though? What happened to make you think that?
Uh, there were and there were reviews for the record Auditorium that came out about the same time that did not mention the record, that just were kind of complete dissing of the band as they thought we were from the film. And this is Rolling Stone and Spin magazine. This isn't just little ones. It was like kind of devastating. Um, and I know there's mixed feelings about that record. Um, I have them myself, but I don't think it's a 1 star or a 1.5 star record.
Is that what they put early, 1 star?
Yeah, I mean it was harsh, and it was like the review does not have this trying to remember a ways back, but I don't remember like uh anything about the record.
Crazy.
Yeah. So and that, was kind of all over the place. And to be, there's every band has their little, roller coaster in the press, and we were definitely ready for the sort of downhill part. But that was way downhill.
Yeah. Just to go back, what this is going way back, but what was your childhood like, and how did you get into music? What was your first interest in music?
Um, my parents always had us in some sort of music lesson or, little kids thing. Um, and randomly, my dad had asked our neighbor, who was a guitar builder, to pick out $100 acoustic so he could learn how to play. And he learned a few things and taught them to me. And I don't know, just music was always there, but nobody really played in my family, and until I started. And it was, I don't know, it's just something I always kind of wanted to do, but never thought I would be good enough to take farther than, I don't know, just screwing around.
You mentioned your dad like taught you a little bit, but was you mainly self-taught, or did you go have guitar lessons?
Oh yeah, pretty much. I would say 98% self-taught. I
Really?
had a I had a couple lessons. It's like as a kid there was a neighbor guy that taught me and a couple other kids how to play some Beach Boys songs, but it wasn't like proper lessons by any means. It was, here's some chords, um, and then here and there I've like kind of gotten people to teach me like finger picking patterns and some basic concepts. But yeah, no, I'm like mostly self-taught.
Do you think teaching yourself has benefited your career because you can do what you want to do?
I think it's helped. It's finally helping. uh, I kind of I kind of found my way of coming up with songs, song ideas, and it's all based on open tunings and not knowing what I'm doing, and just kind of moving my hands around until I find interesting sounding chords, um and then creating that way. And it took a long time to get that far, but it's working. So can't
Well,
complain.
you also went to art college. When you're not making music, are you still doing art now?
A little bit. It's more, some poster and album cover design stuff, but t-shirt designs, but not really. Not as much as I'd like. There just doesn't seem to be enough time to do everything. Should probably give up a band or two.
Well, I was going to ask that next. How much
Yeah.
does music take up, like in a day? How many hours a day? Is it like, I don't know, writing, playing guitar, listening to music?
Um, it's most of my day. I and I it's something that kind of really fell into place during the pandemic, where all of a sudden I had, can't not supposed to leave the house, and I just would come down here, and I decided to completely block out the outside world and just focus on like writing and recording, and came up with a pretty good routine. And I've done a good job of sticking with it. So there's, I'm down here every day, 2 to 8 hours, recording, or trying to record. It's not always successful, but you have to. It's kind of, I heard that. I remember reading about, Nick Cave, where gets up every morning and goes and sits at his desk and writes. And I don't know, I'm not quite that dedicated, but I try.
Does inspiration come to you if you sat there trying to do it, whereas if you were like what going for a walk, it'd come to you better?
It
Like you
comes
can't do too much.
it's all over the place. Um, but it definitely doesn't happen if you don't come, if I don't come and sit here, then lots of stuff doesn't happen. Um, but sometimes that little, like, if you get stuck and you can't find that thing, whatever, that's going to take the song to the next place, or whatever little spark that happens, sometimes you get up, walk away, go do something else, and it'll just click. um I find that that happens a lot. um Also, as far as writing goes, I've said this in a number of interviews, that the sitting in front of a TV, watching a TV show that's good but not great, and playing guitar allows you to stumble across, like, things that you would, like, I don't know, it's good for the working out ideas, because
Yeah.
if the TV show is too good, you're not paying attention to what you're doing on the guitar. If it's too bad, you're just only paying attention to the guitar. It's got to be that weird in between where you get distracted enough that you do something different, and that's the little magic bit. But you have to be aware enough to notice that little magic bit happening. So yeah, I used to always say Law and Order, because that's just about the right level. It's got decent storytelling, decent acting, but not, whatever. You can zone out for a bit and you still know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. Do you take influence from other art forms then, like movies and painting and stuff, for your music?
Yeah, I think I do, but I don't exactly know how that works. I certainly don't, like, look at a painting and go that and create a song based on it, but I know everything influences everything. Um, but yeah, I think, if you don't have that sort of constant, well, especially if I don't have that personal, constant input of ideas, and film, stories, books, artwork, photographs, everything, it's like, I think I need that.
Yeah. When
Just,
you were young. Oh no, sorry,
it's
sorry.
it's that like constant need of, like, seeing really cool stuff and going, okay, I need to do cool stuff.
I was going to say, have you always had that thing since you were younger of wanting to like release art, like for yourself, for your soul, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's the I'm not happy unless I'm not truly happy unless I'm really creating something. And it really, like, it can be as simple as making dinner, sometimes. But it's like that making stuff seems to be very, very important to me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some little psychological issue that causes that, but I'm not going there.
So we mentioned that you self-taught on the guitar. Were you in any bands before the Dandy Warhols?
I had, yeah, one, like, kind of yeah, just one, really, in high school. And funnily enough, it was Courtney that connected me with the rest of the guys. um I had known him, kind of peripherally, and he knew that I played guitar, and he was sort of managing this band. Not that, I don't know, he was helping them out, let's put it that way, and they needed a guitar player, so he connected me with them. Um, but yeah, that was kind of it. And then I went off to college, and didn't really think I would be playing music in the future. And when I moved back home, Courtney got kicked out of the band he was in and asked me to, and then we just started working on some of the songs that he had been writing. So it was just a weird timing, alignment thing.
Was there an instant, like, I know you said you'd known him from before, but was there an instant, like, connection musically?
With Courtney?
Yeah, yeah.
I always liked the bands he was in. They were definitely the sort of the cool, what I thought were the cooler bands in Portland. Um, starting with mid 80s, like, being the cool, I don't know, kind of new wave post-punk kind of stuff that I don't know. Portland's a really small town back then, so having something like that was very cool.
Was grunge music at its peak in America then when you started the Dandy Warhols?
What kind of music?
Grunge music.
Oh yeah. It was sort of, we always kind of, it's that post grunge thing where it wasn't that first wave, it was sort of the Candlebox and I don't know, other bands like that. that were more like a commercial, little bit smoother versions of the original thing. But I don't know, we'd always, I don't know about Courtney, but I'd always been like more into the sort of shoegaze thing before that, and before that was kind of goth stuff. Though I never really saw it as that. I don't know, it was just the bands I was into. So the grunge thing was fun for a moment, but then it just got angry, and that wasn't really what I liked.
Was it My Bloody Valentine's Loveless that got you into shoegaze?
Yeah, I guess so. I was kind of, yeah, might as well just say that. I it was, I kind of got into them a little bit late. I had just had my first art show, like post college, and uh, the girl I was dating, who went back to her place, and she gave me my first hit of ecstasy, put Loveless on, and watched Fantasia with the sound down, and yeah, that was sort of an instant convert.
Like a cult.
And then, like, I think like two weeks later or something, really soon afterwards, My Bloody Valentine was playing I was living in New York at that time. Played in New York, and I went and saw them and had my mind blown. And it was at that point that I kind of wanted to play music again. And yeah, had bought a guitar, and then I just needed effects pedals. Yeah, and then, like, I don't know, 4 months after that, the Dandies started, so it was really like quick after that.
Well, you mentioned Portland. There wasn't a lot going on there, so was there not really a music scene there then either?
No, there's always been a cool music scene here. And the thing about Portland is that bands, if they did bother even going to Seattle, would definitely most of the time skip Portland. So
Really?
if we wanted to see cool bands, we had to drive 3 hours to go to Seattle, or like 8 hours to go to San Francisco. And so a lot of times we just missed out on stuff. And there was a couple little college radio stations that played some cool music, but most, like, I don't like, most of the stuff that I was listening to, we just hunted around in record stores and kind of bought things because the album cover looked a certain way. It's like we had no idea what we were doing, or just like looking for cool things that nobody else had heard of. And that was most everybody in Portland, it seemed.
So how long after the Dandy Warhols formed did you play your first gig?
Uh, let's see, it was kind of 6 months later we played our first gig. Um, and that was probably about 4 months before Zia joined. We had a different bass player, and we had our original drummer, Eric.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that show went terribly.
Why?
I was so nervous, I ended up drinking a little bit too much and plugging in my pedals backwards, and just being unable to figure out why I wasn't getting any sound. Um, and in the process of figuring it out, I knocked my guitar out of tune. Yeah, but yeah, but we persevered and still here, which is
Yeah, I was
great.
gonna say, do you think that experience, like, that gig gave you experience then, that like what not to do?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I didn't learn all the lessons right at once, but um, taught me a bunch right out the gate. Uh, but yeah, it was, you know, that's something I'd always wanted to do. And so it kind of didn't matter how many times it went wrong. I was going to keep trying.
Yeah, yeah. Was it your first gig with Zia where you got offered to an independent record label offered to pay for you to do your debut album? Is that right?
Not the first gig, no.
How long after was that? After Zia joined?
Uh, Probably about uh, hmm, 4 months, something like that, at the most.
What was that like getting that offer?
Well, it was the only label in town that we wanted uh, to pay attention to us, and so we were super excited that they did. Um, and they uh, our like two friends bands got were having uh, were kind of on the same label, so it wasn't really a surprise because we knew that's where we belonged.
What were those early gigs like? Obviously, you mentioned the first one didn't go well, but what were the early gigs like when you weren't so well known?
Um, I just remember it being a blast. I mean, just
Really?
yeah. I mean, we kind of like this. I don't know. We played like 2 3 times a month um, for about. Go away. Sorry. We played for like 3 4 times a month, and just to little audiences, and there was a lot of these. They called them uh, what is it? These little cabaret things that were done at these alternative clubs where it was they would have a night. It's like the starving artist cabaret or whatever. And so people would just like kind of do wacky stuff. And so we were constantly like uh, playing our songs super slow without drums and with backtracks of kind of moaning voices, and or playing things stripped down with just acoustics and a drum machine or like whatever it was, whatever we could do. Um, and then there was this new club that opened up, that new lounge. It's like there was a whole lounge, like 50s kind of lounge thing happening. Um, and this new club opened, and our friend's band got asked to play there, and we were opening up for them. And we were like, okay, let's make all our stuff loungy. So slowed everything down, kind of, you know, tried to make our songs loungy, whatever that means. But for some reason, it went over really well. And um, then we would do an early version of 16 minutes or Fast Driving Rave Up. Um, and everybody would get up and dance. And we became kind of the house band at this venue for like a month or something. And that just sort of clicked, and then we were kind of on our way.
So,
But
oh no, sorry.
oh, I don't know. I was just gonna keep rambling.
So your debut album came out, Dandy's Rule OK, which I think's a brilliant album. What was it like having an album out, like your first album, and how was it received?
It was received quite well, as far as I remember, to the people that actually heard it. You know, because it was still, you know, a very um, indie release. We managed to get a very low budget video on MTV a couple times, which was amazing. And the whole we had video watching parties, or a party, where we all gathered around a television and waited until it came on, which seems crazy these days.
I was gonna
Um,
say you don't see many videos nowadays. There's like it's pointless in
no,
it now.
no, it's not a big deal. It's, yeah, it's gonna come out, and then nobody pays attention. Um, but um, yeah, having a record out, that was, I mean, it was amazing. It's, you know, it was kind of that was the goal at that moment in time, you know, get a record out on an indie label. That was the next step in the trajectory that every band took. And, you know, you hope to be able to do the next step. But and we luckily did. But yeah, it was incredibly cool.
When the band started out, did you set yourself goals, or was it just play the music and see where it takes us?
I was always thinking it was that way, that it was just sort of, that it was fun, you know,
Yeah.
like, and every one of those little goals that we achieved was just cool. You know, I never thought it was going to be my career. You
Really?
know, oh yeah, I never expected it to go on for more than 5 years, because that seemed like a ridiculously long time back then.
How does 30 years feel?
Kind of unreal if I like think about it. Um, but yeah,
So, was it through that album that Capital became interested in the band?
yeah. They already had a connection with our indie label. They had, like, the previous year had signed that band Everclear, from our indie label, and so they knew, they sort of had an in. And yeah. But every pretty much every major label was trying to sign us, which was flattering. And made for a very, very strange, I think it was like 3 or 4 months, where every weekend we were flown to New York or LA, put up in fancy hotels, wined and dined, and then we got sent home to, you know, living in our crappy apartment and eating barely anything. You know, pretty much being starving. Um, and then next weekend off somewhere else, and yeah, it was crazy. Um, and we kind of ended up going with Capital just because they're, the A&R guy that was interested in us, Perry Watts Russell, was just came across smarter, more honest than, and less sleazy than everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. What was it
And
that, what was it about him that like made you click with him?
it was just, the honesty. I mean, I think, you know, or perceived honesty. You know, everybody just like playing the game, but he just, like, he said things that rang true, and um, you know, kind of gave us a glimpse into the record industry that, you know, that we maybe wouldn't have seen with other people.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not sure I really remember accurately, but I just, it's just a gut feeling, you like people or you don't. And everybody else was like so like LA and kind of sleazy.
Yeah, I can
It's that
imagine.
just classic record company, thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, you released 4 albums on Capitol. Which is your favorite of those 4?
um, I always say 13 Tales, and it's not really for the same reason that I think everybody else likes it.
What's your
Um,
reason?
it's kind of the last uh I it's the last innocent record, and I mean that just because every record afterwards was tainted kind of by the success of Bohemian. So that was such a massive thing that it affected everything. And no matter how hard you try to not let, not write another Bohemian or not think about writing hits, it's there. Like what succeeded once, and that doesn't mean it would succeed again if you wrote this another version of it, but um it just affects you. Also, it's the last record we did before Pro Tools kind of took over everything, and so it's made in a kind of old style way of recording. Um, and that has I mean, we got in a room and learned songs together and then recorded them. And I know a lot of bands still do that, but we don't. Um, we're barely ever all in the room when we record. Um,
Do you miss that?
yes and no. It's a lot of work to do it that way, and it's fun work, but I think if we were still doing it that way, we might not exist as a band. We get like kind of sick of each other. Um, or who knows? Maybe we'd be tighter because you know, because of that. It's hard to say.
Well, speaking of Bohemian Like You just mentioned like there's a hit there, and after that everything kind of changes. So would you say there's positives and negatives which come with a hit? Because obviously bands want a big hit. There'll be bands chasing a big hit like that, but it comes with
Yeah.
negatives as well.
Um, yeah, it gets a huge audience, or I mean, benefit, bigger audience. The problem is most of them don't know anything but that one song. And if you're a band like us that doesn't have anything else that sounds like that song, you know, then you get people that will, once that song's played, they just walk out.
Really?
Yeah, I mean there was a bunch of that in the beginning, like when that song was, at its peak. Um, but you know, whatever. It's still it was a good thing. Um, uh, the other like kind of the labels always want more of that, and so there was definitely pressure to do more, another 13 Tales style record, even though we'd moved on, and we definitely try not to repeat ourselves.
Yeah.
um yeah, so, but the benefit is we have our own studio because of that, so there you go.
Yeah,
That's all
exactly.
it is.
Well, the 4th album that you released, the Black Album, was actually meant to be the second, but
Yeah.
Come Down was the second because of the record company. Why do you think they didn't want the Black Album?
Well, so yeah, that's we made up a lot of that story, um because it made for a good press release. We kind of scrapped that initial recording and started again, with some different songs, but with a number of songs that are on the Black Album are on Come Down as well. Um, but it was just, yeah, we just needed a fresh start. And we went back to the studio that we had initially recorded, Rules Okay at, with the same engineer, and just because it was easy, or not easy, it was just because it was something we knew. And then we just, I think we took a month to do that, to record Come Down, and then it was done.
Really? It is
Yeah.
great to hear like the differences between like Boys and Good Morning in Minnesota, hearing
Yeah.
the differences on the albums. Are you glad you
Yeah.
released it later on then?
Yeah, because the thing I like about the Black album, um, is that it's this sort of snapshot of an unfinished thing. It was never mixed. If I remember right, it's actually just off of a cassette that I had somewhere, that all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, here's this thing that we did. Let's put it out because it's cool. It's this, little un untainted by mixing and mastering. Um, and I like it because of that unfinished thing, because it still has the potential to go somewhere, even though it's not going to. It's just like it has the idea that it could go here or there, anywhere really.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas everything else has been completed in not necessarily the way I would have liked.
Really?
Yeah, being in a band is always a compromise.
How much is it like? Obviously, there's four members in the band.
Yeah.
Is the like decision split 25% each, or does somebody
Oh
have a
God, no.
what is it? What's the
In the beginning, Courtney had the more knowledge and wrote most if not all of the songs, and so he definitely was leading the charge with that. Um, every record has sort of somebody else's main influence on it. Like, I don't know. Come Down, 13 Tales, I definitely stepped up with like kind of writing some more of the lead parts, um, and coming up with the different instrumentation, because Eric had left and he used to do a lot of that with keyboards. But as far as it being like more acoustic and kind of that's Brent's influence. Um, Zia really kind of stepped up with her parts on Monkey House. So it just kind of goes here and there, like whoever's kind of has the most influence on Courtney. Um,
yeah.
it's these days it's hard to say what the next one's going to be like, but the last record, it's like I was much more involved, because it was just Courtney and I, and he for some reason let me be a bigger part of the songwriting. No idea why, but it's just the way it worked. I had ideas he was interested in. So,
What is it like?
um,
Does it cause conflict in the band then, or have you kind of, because it's been that long, you kind of like accept it?
there's a lot of just acceptance, which is probably why we're still like, together. But there's plenty of conflict here and there. Nothing really major.
Yeah,
Um,
just yeah.
every once in a while, there's a big blow up, and yeah, and we get over it.
So like with your project, Pete International Airport, you're like
Mhm.
it's your project, whereas with the Bohemians, it's like sorry, with the Dandies, it's like say Courtney's a bit more the leader. So how did you feel
Yeah.
having your own project and you being the leader of something? Was it easy?
I needed that in order to grow as a songwriter, or just being, uh I don't know, just to be able to take my ideas. And initially it was a bunch of ideas that Courtney had no interest in. I would just sit there and play them and nobody paid any attention. Um so I needed to finish them, just for myself. And it was it's I don't know, it was a good lesson to learn, like at how much it actually takes to finish records, and the torture that you put yourself through in order to, you know, choose the path that the song is supposed to go on. You know, there's so many options, so which one's right? And you know, there's just a lot of questioning your I don't know, creative worth. It is I do find it is absolutely torture to create a record or anything really. Um, but once you get through it, it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, I can
Um,
imagine it's a bit yeah, like torture doing it like when it's not always the way you want to do it, sort of.
yeah, or it's I mean, there's always that when you get done and you look back and say, "Oh, I could have done that," whatever, and then you try not to make those mistakes on the next record. Um, but it the hard part is knowing if you're doing it right. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the part nobody tells you about.
So we mentioned Capital. You eventually left Capital. What was the falling out there?
They were going through a period where I don't know, they probably had an yet another new president or something, and somebody had decided they needed to cut all the bands that hadn't made a certain amount of money on their last record, um, or hadn't sold a certain number, I think was what we were told. And I'm not sure any of our records except maybe 13 Tails had sold that number. So we were instantly on the chopping block. But the funny thing is that they had already signed off on the next record, and so they were required to give us a certain amount of money.
Really?
And then once they let us go, they we had a very smart lawyer, I guess, when we signed our deal, because there was a clause that said they had to pay us a certain amount of money if they had signed off on the next record and then let us go. So there's some more money. Um, and because of the Vodafone ad and various TV shows and stuff, we were actually recouped with them. So a couple months later, they had to pay us even more. And if they had just kept us on, they wouldn't have had to pay us quite a bit of money.
That never
It was
really happens, does it?
no, it doesn't. I mean, it was this weird thing where it's like they really just looked at one number that we did not fulfill, but the way our band worked, you know, was like the money came from different places, not record sales. And I don't know, it's just, you know, lack of imagination, or any sort of foresight in a record label. Never heard of it. So it's no surprise. Um, and of course, once we weren't on Capitol Records, we actually realized what they were doing for us, and um, yeah. So you know, we realized what we lost as well.
Well, you started your own record label from there. Did
Yeah.
working with Capital like teach you things that you did differently with your record?
No, no, no. I don't think we learned anything. We definitely or it took a few years, but we learned we know nothing about actually releasing records. You know, so running a record label was never going to happen. We tried. We put out some of our friends' records, but uh, yeah,
Hard work.
yeah, it's yeah, hard work, and none of us knew what to do. Um, and we had a I think we had one guy that was managing us at that point, and he'd never really managed a band. He had been our tour manager, so we were all learning at the same time and screwing things up constantly. But
Well, Eric left the band in
We still are, but you know, whatever.
Eric left the band in '98.
Yeah.
Was it a bit like of, oh, what are we gonna do now, or did you always have Brent in the back of your mind?
No, I didn't know about Brent. I mean, it's Courtney's cousin, so Courtney knew about him. But yeah, I mean, there was an initial thought that we were just that was going to be it, that we were done. Um, but we were instantly, you know, kind of auditioning a few drummers, and it was apparent that it was going to be difficult to find somebody because the first few people that it was so wrong. And then when Brent started like played with us the first time, it was like, okay, we can do this. And then I think within 2 weeks after he was kind of in the band, we were on tour in Europe. So it was very fast. You know, still don't really know how he managed to learn all the songs and then go play like bigger shows than he had ever played before, like, and not just freak out.
Well, we mentioned before, like your musical styles change each album, so it must be hard to come into a band and then 2 weeks have to go on tour and learning all these new songs. And
Yeah, I mean I couldn't have done it back then. Not sure I could do it now. Um, uh, he
I've
did.
seen you before being referred to as like the shy one in the band and the quiet one in the band. So when you got the worldwide fame, how did you cope with that and everybody knowing who you are?
Um, I mean, I don't know that that was a difficult or anything. It was just the way it was, and you know, we've all got egos, so the success and people knowing who we were was just kind of stroking those. Um, um, and yeah, I may be the quiet one in the band, but that's mainly because the others are very loud.
So we mentioned Pete International Airport before.
Mhm.
You also play bass in Sun Atoms. What can you
Yeah.
tell us about those two side projects at the moment?
Um, Sun Adams is just finishing up the second record right now. We just turned it in to the pressing plant. Um, it's quite, I think it's quite a bit different from the first record because that was just a pretty much a pandemic project that Jason, the singer, and I did. You know, he would come over once a week, and we would record his songs, and I would play most of the instruments. And this time we have a band, and everybody's contributing in a massive way to it's like songwriting and all the parts. So it's a really cool thing. And we got Jags Cooner to mix it and Keith Tenniswood to master. So it's got some definitely got some cool people on board.
Good, good. You've had a lot of
Yeah.
highs in your career. What's been your
Yeah.
favorite moment?
Um, you know, going on tour with David Bowie for 2 months is kind of hard to top. Um, but just you know things like playing Top of the Pops and playing at the Olympia and the Roundhouse and just you know the Fillmore, just mind blowing that I get to do that. Opening for the Rolling Stones, you know, Tom Petty, um, playing festivals with everybody. You know, it's very very cool, and I feel incredibly lucky. Um, and you know, as far as like with Pete International, being able to send out you know cold call people essentially, you know, that to ask if they want to work, you know, on a song with me, and they know who I am, and so I actually get a response. You know, that's amazing. So
Well,
yeah.
it's been 30 years since the Dandies formed, like we've mentioned. what keeps you motivated and inspires you to still make new music with the Dandies and your side projects?
Um, like ultimately, it's like it's I don't know. I know I have like a drive of some sort that kind of means I'm only truly happy when I'm making music, and I haven't run out of ideas yet, so there's still a stockpile of things I want to finish. And, there seems to be enough ideas for all the different bands, and um, I would probably play in more bands if I could. It's I don't know, it's what it feels like what I'm supposed to be doing. Um, so I'm glad, very happy that I get to do this.
Is there any new bands that you're into at the moment that you think people should check out?
Um, God, there's a band in LA that I've been doing a little bit of work with called Tremors, who I really like. Um, and uh, there's that whole kind of crop of new shoegaze kind of bands like that I don't know that they've been out a while, so it's probably just new to me, but like Deary and uh Bedroom,
Yeah.
I think they're really cool. Holy Youth Movement, that I kind of found out about with Jags. I like them. Um, who else? The label that we do some of our work with here in the States, called Little Cloud, has lots of cool bands. We've been touring with this band called Sisters of Your Sunshine Vapor. They're they're from Detroit, and so they have a sort of Detroitness to them that's to kind of the indie psych rock thing that so many people are doing, but they've got a thing that's very cool. That's all I think of at the moment. I'm sure there's always more, but
Yeah, I'll check
uh,
them ones out that you've mentioned
yeah,
though.
yeah.
Just to finish off then,
Mhm.
if there's a new up and coming band now, I know the music business and everything's changed since you started, but what tips would you give to these up and coming bands?
Um, hmm. I mean, there's so much that I don't know how to do with like the whole social media nonsense. Um, that anybody that's starting out now probably has a better idea how to deal with that than I do. Um, but as far as making your music, just like I guess think big, you know. Um, don't try to not cut corners with when making records. Um, don't don't record a piece and loop it over and over again if you can play it all the way through. I I don't know. I don't know if that makes any difference or if it's just a feel, but I like doing that. I think it helps with so much music that's is loop based. Um, I don't know. Find cool people to work with. Find a really good promotion person. I mean, the hard part is getting noticed. So it's like I don't know. That's the tricky part, and I'm still working on it for myself. So you know,
Did you notice that then when like you started these side projects, how with the Dandies you'd been big for a bit, but then you start these side ones, it's like restarting again. Did you notice that?
it's absolutely like restarting. You'd think that whatever number of Dandy's fans would instantly be open to what you're doing, and it's absolutely not that case. I would guess that probably 70% of Dandy's fans have no idea that I'm doing anything outside the Dandies.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I otherwise I would have sold more records, but I don't know what else to do to get any of them to pay any attention. But yeah, it's so weird. None of it makes sense. Like, and that goes for like every single person in the Dandies has done something outside the band that's had pretty much no success compared to the Dandies. You know, it's like Courtney did his illustrated novel thing, graphic novel, and like hardly anybody noticed. You know, Brent's got a couple bands going on. You know, it's a local Australia thing. It hasn't gone farther. Zia's done her things. I think she's probably achieved more with being a realtor than the rest of us have done with anything outside the Dandies. You know, it's weird. It's very weird.
I know you'd obviously like to sell more records, but you're kind of glad it's like that they're not just come over and you're building a new audience.
I would like. I mean, the problem is like with any of these side projects, it's like there has to be more interest in it for me to be able to take it outside of, you know, just kind of the local area. I would love to take Sun Adams and to Europe. I would love to take, you know, the PIA back to Europe, or to Australia, but getting enough interest that to get the, you know, financial support to do something like that seems to be impossible.
It is crazy, really, when you think about it. Yeah.
But you know, it's also I don't know. I kind of make those records because I have to. It feels like I have to. It satisfies something, so I will keep doing it, no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that you're still doing it for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any other way to do it. Like, honestly, or for me, I've done music for other people, and it's fun, but it doesn't satisfy me in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Pete, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a privilege to talk to you, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. Thanks for reaching out.
No worries. Thank you for answering me and coming on and doing it. It means a lot.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, anytime.
Nice one. Thank you. See you in a bit.
All right, ciao.
See you. Bye.